Swayam Prabha. Digital India. Educated India.
Welcome back. In lecture 42, we will talk about construction and demolition waste management, and this is part 1 of the lecture. So, the different concepts that we will cover are construction and demolition waste generation in India, C&D waste quantification methods, C&D waste characteristics, and construction and demolition waste management rules 2016 and C&D waste processing. Now, C&D waste refers to construction or demolition waste refers to waste comprising of building materials, debris and rubble resulting from construction, remodeling, repair and demolition of any civil structure. That is how it is defined in the waste management rules. Now, from where do this waste is generated, particularly in urban areas? Either it's from demolition of existing or old dilapidated structure, renovation of existing buildings, construction of new buildings, excavation, reconstruction of asphalt or concrete roads. So, not only buildings, it's also cover roads. Then construction of new flyover bridges, under bridges, subways. So, not only also roads, but also infrastructure over roads such as subways, bridges and so on. Renovation, installation of new water, telephone, internet, sewer pipelines. So, that means any kind of digging, any kind of laying of pipelines and all that also will require some sort of excavation, laying of some brick soling and all these things that will also lead to certain amount of waste. And then present collection and the disposal system as well. So, these are the different sources of C&D waste in urban areas. So, the primary point that we will take from this is it's not only masonry, it's not only brick, but lot of soil, lot of silt, because lot of excavated material also comes from this kind of activities. So, the waste that we are C&D waste, not only it is not only the waste that is being generated out of this kind of demolition or this kind of activities, but it also includes the surplus, damaged and temporarily used products, materials during the above activities on site. So, that means during the construction process or during the demolition process, during different stages, there are excess, particularly during construction, there are excess surplus material, there are some damaged material which cannot be reused. So, all these materials are also added as the material that should be generated from that waste, from that particular site. Now, why we are estimating this? Because as you understand, suppose I want to estimate the total quantum of waste generated from a particular project site. Suppose it's a building project. So, how will I decide on that? I can take the total square footage of that particular project, multiply with the waste generation rate. Like we can understand that so much amount of concrete, so much amount of all this wood, the steel, all these things are utilized in this project. We can have very detailed calculations and all that. So, we know that okay, so much amount of waste will be generated from demolition. But during the construction process of this building, suppose we are looking into the construction part and all other things, we have to also estimate that during the construction process also there will be also a lot of losses or other kinds of waste would be generated. So, this also needs to be accounted for. So, it's not only based on the actual size of the volume of the building, but also the process itself or how complicated the building is, how much wastage is happening, all these things plays a role. So, C&D waste, construction and demolition waste is of course of very high density and it's a bulky nature. So, because of this nature, when people store this waste outside their own premise in the roads or in the surrounding footpath, of course, that will lead to a lot of traffic congestion in that area because it will reduce the size of the effective size of the road. That will lead to accidents. And usually this will not only lead to accidents and all, when you are storing this kind of garbage outside, the drains also get blocked. So either this, for storing this waste for construction, the drains will get blocked, or if it's used for filling up low-lying areas, or it is disposed illegally inside municipal bins and storage, or in drains themselves, it will lead to flooding and so on. So if you illegally dispose of this waste, because of its nature, which is very heavy, bulky, and also, it will complicate every stage. For example, if it's put in municipal storage bins, we are not planning our municipal garbage collection system based on this kind of garbage. So that would create problems. Or unnecessarily the weight of the containers would be too high. Maybe the skip loader would not be able to lift it. That can happen. Or if you are putting it in the drains are getting blocked, then it may lead to flooding of that entire area. So if you are not properly managing C&D waste, it may lead to lots and lots of problems. So if it mixes with the other kinds of waste, municipal waste stream, of course, not only it increases weight, but also it reduces the quality of other waste streams. Because the other waste streams are pretty straightforward, either wet, dry, or hazardous. So wet waste goes to the compost plant. So if we are putting C&D waste, of course, it will contaminate that particular waste. Same goes for the other kinds of waste which could be recycled, right? So all the dry fraction of waste which can be recycled also gets contaminated if C&D waste is mixed with that. So it's better to keep C&D waste separate from the standard waste streams that we have in our urban area. So Government of India has now come up with a separate set of rules for C&D waste. It is known as Construction and Demolition Waste Management Rules 2016. Now looking into waste generation in India, around 25 to 35% of the total solid waste generated in India is C&D waste. So sometimes it's even more, particularly in cities which are very growing very fast. Lot of construction and demolition work is happening. So in those cities, even this value is a tad higher than this particular what we are showing over here. So this gives a rough estimate. This table shows a rough estimate of the C&D waste for the year 2011. Around the population is given for 2011. Accordingly, the C&D waste generation is estimated in tons per day, which comes like Mumbai shows, Delhi shows the highest, 4,600. Whereas other cities like Coimbatore, Bhopal, these are smaller cities, the values are much less in tons per day. So according to the total waste that is generated in each city, we have to determine what sort of facilities for processing, or what sort of what should the capacity of the processing facility, or is it feasible to do processing of this C&D waste, and also how much amount of landfill area would be required. So based on the total annual C&D waste generation in India, starting from, we get different figures starting from 2001, 2010, 2013, 2016. So it ranges from 12 to some estimates say 12 to 15 million tons per year, or even some estimates are so high such as 165 to 175 metric tons, which is given by BMTC. Maybe some of this waste gets reused. That means in India, if you leave this kind of waste outside, it would be taken away by some other people for filling up low-lying areas and so on. So in that case also, maybe the variation in how you are estimating it also leads to this kind of differences. Currently, CPHEO guidelines give a figure of around 25 to 30 meters. So we will go along with that. So 25 to 30 meters, maybe now even 48 meters it seems acceptable, assuming that it has increased further. So roughly we can assume this kind of figures, but it's very difficult to say what is exactly correct. So C&D waste generation could be also looked at in form of rates of generation of waste. For every square kilometer of new construction, 40 to 60 kilograms of waste is generated. Same goes for repair of building, the same 40 to 50 kilograms of waste is generated. Why? Because here the waste generation is a function of wastage or natural excess which happens during the natural rejects that happens during the construction process. So either it is excess or rejects. Like when you sieve the sand, then some rejects will come out. So all this thing leads to around 40 to 50 kilograms of waste per square meter of building repair or new construction. Whereas if the same thing for demolition of building ranges from 300 to 500 kilograms per square meter. Now, or you can also in terms of pakka houses and semi-pakka houses, the rates given by CPHEO is around 500 kilograms per meter cube of pakka building, whereas 300 kg per meter cube of semi-pakka building. So, those values are also given, whereas it is 40 to 60 kg per cubic meter for minor repair, renovation and construction. So, the units are also different. So, both the values are given. So, roughly for so much amount of area of the building, more or less it's the same thing. That means for every square meter of space, we can assume that so much amount of weight, so much amount of kilogram of waste is being produced. But sometimes in special buildings, we may go with this kind of calculations as well. Now, how do we quantify this waste? So, first waste is the detailed site visit method. That means we go to the site, measure the amount of waste that is being generated. So, this is detailed estimation at the project level. And then the generation rate calculation method. So, we have already given you certain rates. We multiply the area or the total quantity of waste that is being derived, volume of waste. From there we can generate it, use it. So, it's at so for regional or broad area level, we can determine that so much square foot of construction has happened. So, what would be the total waste that would be generated from that much amount of construction per year for that particular area. So, from there we can do this kind of calculation. We can use geographical information systems which give us spatial distribution of waste generation in an area. Every area is different. So, variation, how much amount of waste is generated during different times of the year, because construction activity varies at different time periods. The composition of waste, generation of waste from different areas, the heterogeneity in the generation in different areas, all these things could be determined via GIS processes. Then building information modeling can be also utilized. As you know, this kind of software can give us detailed estimates of what volume of waste is being generated, or what volume of concrete, what volume of steel, what all these things are utilized in a particular project. From there also we can determine how much amount of waste would be generated. Now, variables modeling method is a method where we actually say that like different areas can have different waste. Now, if I develop a model which takes in certain variables or certain parameters, where I say that these 4 parameters influence the overall waste generation for that particular project or that particular site or for that particular building. So, we can develop relationship between systemic variables and we can predict waste generation. So, some form of regression models and all these things can be also used for predicting waste generation for other buildings. Now, the classification system accumulation method, this is where C&D waste is classified into different categories, because each class of material has different characteristics, recycling feasibility, storage, collection and disposal requirements. So, all waste categories are treated separately, and how much of each of these categories is determined, and waste generation rate per unit and the total amount of total units are determined. Based on that, we can determine how much total waste to be generated. Finally, material flow analysis approach, where combination of MFA and weight for construction area method could be combined to determine that overall how much material is coming into the site, how much material is going out. In that order, we can determine how much amount of waste is generated. So, the C&D waste characteristics also vary as per, because it's not one kind of waste. There are different items which is there in construction and demolition waste. For example, it includes bricks, tiles, stones, soil, rubble, plaster, drywall or gypsum board, wood, plumbing fixture, non-hazardous insulating material, plastic, wallpaper, glass, metal, so on. So, steel, aluminum, all these metals are also available. Now, hazardous or radioactive waste is not considered, even though some of them may be present in certain kinds of buildings, but we ignore this kind of waste for normal C&D waste processing, collection as well as disposal and treatment. So, the composition will vary. What proportion of all these components should be there in the construction and demolition waste? It varies as per the age of the building, because at different times different kind of material were utilized, so that as per age it will vary, the material also deteriorates over time, and the type of building demolished, renovated, constructed, that also determines what sort of waste would be generated. Now, usually when we get C&D waste, we categorize into 4 municipal streams or 4 waste streams, you can say. So, this is as per the the C&D waste management rules. So, this is concrete, soil, steel, wood and plastic. These are taken together, and bricks and mortar. Why these are separate like this? Because concrete is crushed to generate smaller particles, soil is separated and sold separately, steel, wood and plastic could be sent to recycling, or in certain cases they could be sent to other kinds of plants for generating energy or so on. Bricks and mortars could be again sold, crushed and so on. So, but it's different from concrete, that's why these are kept separate. So, most collected C&D waste is mixed, containing about 50% soil and silt. So, as we are talking, all these things are mixed together, and along with that there is also soil and silt, which is about 50% of all waste. And particularly during natural calamities and all, if the waste that is generated includes lot of this, this kind of waste as well. So, during natural calamities, obviously because of destruction, lot of this C&D waste is generated. But again, the kind of, depending on what kind of event it was, we can have, if it was a flooding event, we can have lot of silt and soil. If it was something like a earthquake, then lot of rubble, lot of bricks, mortar would be there. So, roughly as per TFAC 2001, typical composition of Indian C&D waste is given, where around soil, sand and gravel is around 36%, brick and masonry is 31%, concrete 23%, metal 5%, bitumen 2%, wood 2% and others 1%. So, accordingly we can also plan our waste processing systems as well. So, coming to the solid waste, this construction and demolition waste management rules 2016, few definitions. I think more or less these definitions are pretty self-explanatory. I will not go into details, but deconstruction, this is the one which is a little bit, that may require your attention, which is, it means a planned selective demolition in which salvage, reuse and recycling of the demolished structure is maximized. So, it's a planned way of deconstructing a building so that we can generate particular kinds of C&D waste, and we are able to reuse that kind of C&D waste. Whereas the other terms, construction, demolition, I think it's fine. You can understand those. So, the rules say that there has to be mandatory segregation of C&D waste. And in what categories? The earlier 4 categories that we discussed. So, and particularly this has to be done for generators who generate more than 20 tons in one day or 300 tons per project in a month, and the approval, and for each of this generator you have to take separate approval from the ULB before even you can start operation. So, on project to project basis, for every project you have to take separate permissions. This kind of permissions has to be taken because you have to have a total C&D plan or in place before you are given any sort of approval. So, C&D waste has to be stored within premise and then deposited to collection center or to local body or to processing facilities, and no obstruction and littering or disruption of traffic and drains are allowed. Now, the collection could be done by the local body or could be even the developer of that particular site. They can also take it to that particular processing center or that particular collection center. Then if you are collecting, transporting, processing, disposing, the ULB, of course, it requires money, it requires some payment. So, payment has to be given for this kind of activities. That means, ULB will charge you money for all this kind of activities. So, ULB needs to prepare a detailed C&D waste management plan, including segregation, storage, how much segregation they will do, where they will store, how they will do the collection. Will they develop a system where they can, based on a booking, they can go and collect the waste at certain times of the day. They have to plan their journeys, routes, they have to combine multiple pickups, all these things together. And for that, they can use those traveling salesman problem, using VRP and all this, they can plan their journeys and the routes for the vehicles. In addition, reuse, recycling, transportation, disposal, all this thing has to be thought of while preparing the C&D waste management plan. So the other thing is the law states that everything should be cleaned in a regular time, within a reasonable time frame, and mostly it should be regular. We cannot keep this kind of waste left on a particular area. And for removal of C&D waste, the ULB can tie up with some agencies who can do the actual collection and transporting process. And Pollution Control Board or Pollution Control Committee is there for monitoring and approval of different kind of processing facilities. Now, these are some of the duties of local authorities, and first of all, the overall direction of C&D waste management in an urban area has to be prepared by the urban local body. There's different stages. Methodology, equipment, material and final cleanup for C&D waste has to be prepared. This kind of plan has to be prepared. Safe disposal of contaminated CD waste. Placement of appropriate containers and their collection when filled. Then transfer of waste to processing and disposal facilities. Incentive to generators for salvaging, processing or recycling in situ. So all these are pretty standard. This is same as normal waste management. Whereas one thing new is that there has to be incentives given to the generators for both recycling, salvaging or reusing some parts and sending something for recycling, sending it to processing centers, and finally recycling if it is done in situ. That means you do the recycling process in situ for use in the same project. For example, I will show you an example later where after processing of the waste in the site, it was used in the site itself. So that actually will reduce a lot of transportation cost. So sanction of waste management plan of generators. So when somebody says that I have this kind of construction activities going on, you have to take permission, right? So ULB has to sanction this plan. So that is also another activity of the ULB. Then track construction and waste this ULB need to track what kind of construction activities are happening, where, how much amount of waste is being generated, and also they need to create a database where they have to store all this data, and that data has to be updated at certain intervals. Consultation with expert institutions for management, processing facility and recycling. So of course this kind of knowledge is still not that common in ULBs and all. So for capacity building and all, they have to consult with educational institutions or expert institutions. Then IIC campaigns with expert institutions, civil societies and websites, so that people are aware of the different processes that has to be followed, or they have to be aware of the rules as well, and so on. And finally, they have incentives for use of material made of C&D waste in construction activity. So that means either via other agencies or ULB in their own projects and all, they have to utilize all this waste, that is process waste, that we are generating from C&D waste within their own activities as well, such as non-structural concrete, paving blocks, lower layers of road pavements, colony and rural roads. This could utilize processed C&D waste or recycled C&D waste for use. So 3 additional schedules are given in the rules. Schedule 1 is management of C&D waste, which is guidance on storage, collection, transportation, processing and disposal, reuse and use of the recycled products. Then there has to be mandatory procurement of material, which is 10 to 20% made from C&D waste in municipal and government contracts. So all these activities are more or less same as standard other waste streams of the solid waste management. So in solid waste management, we have different kind of waste streams, and we have learnt about the other waste stream, how to collect and how to transport and so on. The same things also apply for construction and demolition waste as well. The difference is that after this processing, there is mandatory procurement of materials that has to be done to facilitate the recycling process. Now, Schedule 2 talks about use of processed C&D products in operation of sanitary landfills. Earlier, if you remember, we have discussed when the covers for sanitary landfills, some amount of materials in the drainage layers and all can utilize this kind of C&D waste. So that is what it talks about. And finally, Schedule 3 talks about time frame for planning and implementation of this kind of plans. So, for example, for different kinds of cities, 1 million, 0.5 to 1 million and lesser than 0.5 million, you can see that the policies has to be finalized by 12 months. Sites for collection and processing facility has to be set up within 18 months. Commissioning of the facility within 18 months or 24 or 36 as the case may be. That means this for 1 million plus cities, it has to be done within 1.5 years. And then monitoring of this activities 3 times a year, once in 4 months, or 2 times a year, once in 6 months. Accordingly, they have given some schedule. So this is what Schedule 3 of the construction and demolition waste management rules is all about. Now, finally, we have to, once we collect following the schedules and all, we have to design our the C&D waste processing and transport plants and all. So, what we find is, after all this, we have to actually process the C&D waste, right? So, in India, around only 5% of C&D waste is processed, even though because there is a lot of potential for this kind of C&D waste for reuse and recycling, but still only 5% is processed currently, but we have to improve upon it. And it acts as a replacement for sand and stone in construction. And as you have seen earlier, that for for structural concrete, it's better not use this kind of aggregate. This processed aggregate, but for non-structural concrete, for lean concrete, it's fine. We can use this kind of material. Because we are processing it, it will reduce public nuisances such as accidents, traffic congestion, drain blocking and all this stuff. It will save landfill space because we are reutilizing them, and local recycling also reduces low transportation cost for this kind of waste. Now, IS standards 383, this is standards for coarse and fine aggregate for concrete. It says that this is BIS IS standards for 383. This is recycled concrete aggregate which is derived from concrete after requisite processing. This is for plain concrete, we can use 25%, for reinforced concrete around 20%, but up to M25 grade. And for lean concrete, 100% could be this RCA material could be utilized, and for it could be used as a coarse aggregate and also used as a fine aggregate as well. Whereas for recycled aggregate, which is not only concrete but made from concrete, brick, tiles, stones, everything crushed together, in that case we can use it only for lean concrete and as coarse aggregate. So this is the difference. So if it is coming from concrete, it could be used both as a fine and coarse aggregate, after of course making it into smaller pieces and shredding it and crushing it and then screening it and so on. But other than that, we can use it for coarse aggregate. If it is just for standard concrete mix of bricks, tiles and all this stuff, then we can use it as a coarse aggregate for lean concrete. So the National Building Code of India also talks about use of recycled coarse aggregate in concrete as bulk fill, bank protection for some channels, base fill of drainage structures, pavements, sidewalks, curbs and gutters. And it suggests 30% replacement of natural crushed coarse aggregate and 50% for pavements and other areas where compressive strength is an issue, but other kinds of strength are non-issue. So that is how this kind of material is being promoted in different building codes and different kinds of codes in India, that actually will help in further reuse or recycle of this particular product. So Building Material and Technology Promotion Council BMTPC also have given certain guidelines for utilization of C&D waste in construction of dwelling units and related infrastructure in housing schemes of government, and accordingly certain projects have been also taken up. The Central Public Works Division CPWD has given guidelines on reuse and recycling of C&D waste. Then CPWD and National Building Construction Company, they have not only said that they will use recycled portions of C&D waste in the construction activities in buildings, but also they said that up till 100 kilometers of the construction sites, they are willing to come and get this waste and utilize this kind of waste in their particular projects. So that is how NBCC has also tied up with CPWD to use this kind of material. Indian Road Congress is also supposed to prepare codes for practice and standards for use of recycled CD and waste in roadworks. And finally, the Ministry of Urban Development has created a pilot project, which is a C&D processing and recycling facility for 1 million plus cities, and this is known as the Burari model, and we will discuss this project in the next lecture. So these are some of the references you can study. So to conclude, as per Construction and Demolition Waste Management Rules 2016, management of C&D waste is now made mandatory, and there is a huge potential for using C&D waste, and these have huge environmental and economic benefits. Thank you.